No, some people are further on.
He's got 50 minutes.
I'm going to go ahead and get started. Again, for those of you who weren't here yesterday, for those of you who were here yesterday, it's good to see you again. Let me know if you cannot hear me. Did you have any trouble hearing me yesterday? No. The people in Midvale had no trouble hearing me. Right here. Is that good? Yeah. Again, my name is Brent Bateman. If you weren't here yesterday, I am the State Property Rights Ombudsman. In addition to being an attorney, I am a professional mediator. I've received a lot of mediation training and I have a lot of mediation experience. A major part of my job is I sit down with folks and, around the table and I help people work out deals. That's one of the ways that I help people stay out of court is by mediating. I love to do it. If you have a case in your community that looks like it might get ugly, and mediation is a possibility, and it has anything to do with property rights or land use or anything like that, let me know. I will beat it down there as fast as I can. I will mediate for you. I'll do everything I can, and the price is right because the price is what? Free. That's right. I know that. Except for what? Except for your tax dollars. Somebody has to pay my salary, and you guys are paying it for your tax dollars. I'm joking. Sorry about that. I'm not sorry. Let me just say too, before I get too deep into this, is did you have a good day today? I wasn't able to be here as got a lot of good training. Folks, I hope you understand the quality of the training you received. Some of the folks who have been on this list and who have come talk to you over the last 2 days are the absolute top folks of their profession. They're the best folks in the state who have been here. Wilf, Neil Lindbergh, Craig Call, those are just the ones that I've seen. Some of the other folks, Bart Coons, I think was here. Absolutely top-notch training. And I just want to congratulate these folks for getting those folks here. I'm not including myself in that. I'm, training and speaking is part of my job. I'll come speak to your some meeting class or whatever you want to. But absolute top notch, and so I hope you realize what a great level of people we've had here, and that these guys have managed to get here. It's been very impressive to me, and I hope that it's been worth it and excellent. Having said that, again though, it seems that all my colleagues have left. So if there's anything that they said that you'd like to discuss, let me know. Happy to do it. I'll give you my opinion. Just another opinion. I agree with most of what they say, and then I disagree with most of what they say too. So, I'm here to talk now about land use challenges in rural areas. And what I did is I came up with this list for things that I've found based on my discussions with people who call me, land use challenges that are faced typically by rural areas. This is not everything. These are just the things that mostly came to mind. And folks, this is my entire slideshow. Is this list. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to do things a little bit differently. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, look at this list and tell me what you want to talk about. Okay? Because as I go around and I train with people and I talk with people and I help people understand, which again is part of my job, I would like to be able to really make the trainings that I use useful, okay? And especially when I'm going to rural areas, and again, there's no point in going to rural areas and talking about things that issues that rural areas don't face that only the cities face. So, while this list is here, I would like some input from you folks about what would be really useful to talk about. So that's why I put this up here, so you guys can pick and choose, and if you have something that's even not on this list, I warned you about this yesterday, bring it up. That's also fine. But meanwhile, here's the list of things that we can talk about if anybody wants to pick and choose one.
Can we start with Old Sister Hogan, please?
Start with Old Sister Hogan. Can anybody guess what I'm going to say about Old Sister Hogan?
Actually, I think the road washed out by your house. Oh no, that was Hannum. That was Hannum.
Here's the thing. Old Sister Hogan goes by many names when people call me. One of the names it goes by is Good Old Boys Club. Another way that it comes by is that, well, here's what the deal with Old Sister Hogan. You are, in your area, you have a Board of Adjustment, okay? And one day, the Board of Adjustment receives an application for a variance. Somebody wants a zoning variance. And so what happens is, they get down and they sit down in the meeting, and where's the applicant? And in puts Old Sister Hogan. We all know her. She's just a lovely lady. She's been in the community forever. She used to babysit our kids. And she's just as sweet and kind as she can possibly be. And she gets there up in front of everybody, and she tells you why she needs a variance, and she starts to cry. Does she get her variance?
Yeah.
Yes. Every time. Should she get her variance? I can't believe how many times I see this. And when I say
She cookies before she did.
she does bring cookies. And you see the old things, these brownies that she makes, and it's just cream cheese in them. Oh yeah. This is also called the Good Old Boys Network, because what people say to me all the time is they say, you know what? I came to my town with an application, and I'm new in town. I've only been there for 20 years. And I'm new, and I have this application, and my application complies with the law 100%, and they won't approve it. They said no. Have you ever seen that happen? Is this something that happens in your rural areas sometimes? Here's the thing, folks, I can't stress this enough. There's a reason why we have laws, okay? There is no spirit of the law when we're talking about this kind of stuff, okay? And I know this kind of goes against some of our grain to say that, but there's a reason why we have laws, and that is because what we have in the laws, we have conflicting property rights, okay? And property rights are one of the areas where there's the biggest conflict, because what you have is you have a property owner, and probably all of you own property. I own property. And the property owner wants to do certain things with their land, okay? And the Constitution protects their right to do that. They have a right to do certain things with their land, okay? But the problem you have is that conflicts with the public interest, okay? Sometimes the things you want to do with your land are not in harmony with the public interest. It conflicts. I would like to build a strip club on my land. Forget that I live right next door to elementary school, okay? No one in towns wants to see a strip club and a bar right next door to an elementary school. Okay? So we have this. We have my property right to do what I want with my land conflicting with the public interest. And as folks who work with counties and in government, I mean, you see it, you know, because you have to be concerned about both. You're a property owner, and I'm sure you believe in property rights, but you have to think about the public interest. Okay? Well, how do we resolve that conflict? That's why we have the law. That's why we have LUNA and CLUNA. Okay? The land use law was created carefully over a long period of time, over trial and error, to bring balance to that conflict. Okay? This is how we're going to do it. We're going to say, as a property owner, you can do anything you want with your land as long as we as a community have not regulated that. As a county, you can create ordinances saying what people can and cannot do, use ordinances. Okay? You can use your land in this way, and this way, and this way. In this area, you can put all the strip clubs you want. In this area over here, we're just going to have homes, so we don't want people hauling gravel out of there. Okay? So we're going to create these zones. We're going to say you can do this here, and you can't do that there. All right? And so you have to follow that law, because that's the law. Okay? So that takes away your ability to do what you want with your land. Okay? The balance comes in the fact that if the county doesn't say it, you can do it. So if the county doesn't say that you cannot haul gravel out of a residential area, and you want to haul gravel out of an elementary residential area, you can do it. So the county has to say it, but if the county says it, it acts as a restriction on your property rights. Okay? That's how that balance is created. The problem with Old Sister Hogan is when people start saying, well, you know, it just doesn't quite follow the law, but it makes sense, and by the way, this is such a sweet old lady. We love her so much, and it's not going to hurt. And so we're just going to look the other way and do that. Brings that out of balance. And somebody's property rights have been violated as soon as you've done it. Somebody's property rights have been violated. If it's not Sister Hogan's, if it's not the public's, it's one of the neighbors. And so as soon as you've done that, you've shifted that out of balance. That's why it's so important to follow the law.
Make sure I heard you right, because I think we've been doing it the opposite. You said if the county doesn't say it, it is allowed, right?
Well, that's an oversimplification.
Okay.
But yes, it's true, okay?
Because we've been doing it, if it's not addressed, it's not allowed.
Well, if your ordinances say that, that's fine.
Okay.
So say you have a list of uses,
Okay.
okay?
Yeah.
If you say, in your ordinance, you say, if it's not listed here, it's prohibited,
Okay.
that's fine.
Okay.
But your ordinances have to say that. If your ordinances do not say if it's not listed here, it's prohibited, then it's allowed.
Okay.
See, the beauty part is, as government, you can say just about anything you want.
Yeah.
And you can restrict it however you want. You know, you can say the houses have to be that far from the street, and another place you can say it has to be that far from the street. You can say that in this area we're going to have these uses and these uses and these uses and no others. Or you can say in this area you can do anything. You can have an ordinance that says you can do anything in this area you want to. You can do all that. And all of that is going to be legal and upheld, generally. Okay? But that's going to control what they can and cannot do. Okay? Which means that if they try to do something that is within what those ordinances say, where those ordinances say the way I said it or the way she said it, if they want to do that, you have to say yes.
Okay.
If their application complies with an ordinance, you have to say yes. Okay? That includes conditional uses. Right? Okay? You understand, and I'm sure you've been told this, maybe today, I'm sure many other times, that if someone applies with you for a conditional use, you know, this is not a question of, well, we'll take a look and see if we want that here. And if we want that here, we'll let you do that with our conditions. That is not the question. The question of conditional use is, since we listed this as conditional use, we have already said we want that here. But we understand that there may be some detrimental effects, so we're going to impose some conditions to mitigate those. But still, the answer is yes. That's how conditional uses work. It's not discretionary. The answer is still yes. You just get to impose conditions to mitigate that effect. Does that fly in the face of anything that you've all been told before? So anyway, the frequent problem. That's what Old Sister Hogan is about. That's what the Good Old Boys Network is about. And as staff, as attorneys, you know, I urge you to continue to urge your decision makers and your land use authorities to follow the law. Because as soon as you don't, you're violating somebody's property rights. So, if you're one of the decision makers, I urge you to follow the law too. You probably won't, but that's what I have to say about that. Any others? You have eyesores in your community? Tell me if you think this is your community. This is a call that I received recently. Tell me if you think I'm talking about your community. Okay? I got a call recently from someone who said, you know, we're an older community, we've been around a long time, and what we've got is we've got a nice little town, you know, the town, coming in. It's really beautiful, little homes and everything, and then you get to the center of town and it's a completely abandoned crap hole. Okay? And then you pass that and get back to the nice. And we would like the center of our town to look better, because what we have there is there's a junkyard right there on that one corner, and on the other corner there's 3 old abandoned former auto body shops that are falling down, junky, and we try to talk to the people about cleaning those up, and they won't. Does that sound familiar? Is it your town? No one's volunteering, so it must not be. Oh, it's Frankie's.
Yes, it is. I think
It's down where you
it sounds
live?
like a few towns around.
What other kind of eyesore issues do you face? Trash?
Junk vehicles,
People who just don't clean up?
abandonment.
Junk cars?
People living in camp trailers.
People living where?
In camp trailers.
In camp
And
trailers?
running extension cords for 85 feet.
Oh, that's a good
Around the
one.
neighbor.
That's
It's
a
only
good
done
one.
when their septic takes open to the ground.
I had a very similar issue to that from a man town. Where somebody said that there was a trailer that wasn't even worthy to be a trailer. And somebody was living there, and of course, as soon as, you know, anybody from the town would come, you know, they would board up the wheels and they would run away and it's abandoned and everything. And then the next thing you know, here's some, that trailer's plugged into the neighbor's outlet. Sucking the juice out of it. What do you do? What do you do about eyesores? What do you do if you have a junkyard right on Main Street? Or what do you do if you have garbage issues or somebody, or there's a field with weeds? What do you do? Call the county. You are the county.
Issue a notice of non-compliance or a citation.
Well, first of all, before you can issue a notice of non-compliance, they have to be in non-compliance,
Yes.
right? So you have to have the right ordinance, right? And what did I just say about ordinances? You can have just about any ordinance you want, okay, as long as it's not illegal, okay? So if you want to say something is not, you know, we don't want that in our town, you know, we're going to pass an ordinance and we're going to make that happen. What's the caveat to that?
Non-conforming uses.
How do those work?
Well, it has to have been legal initially.
If they were there before the ordinance change making them legal, okay, you have to let it go. They get to continue to do that. That includes your junkyards. Now that doesn't include health, safety, and welfare issues. Okay? So if you have a health, safety, and welfare ordinance, if what they're doing is causing a fire hazard or something, you know, you can abate that. If what they're doing is causing, you know, toxic gas to leak into the air, then you can do that. You can enforce that. Okay? But what if they have a non-conforming use? What can you do about that? Somebody explain amortization to me. Somebody explain eminent domain to me. Eminent domain? We don't use it in your county, do we? If you have a non-conforming use, and this kind of skips from there to there, so I'm sorry about that, but if you have a non-conforming use, you have a property right. You have a property right, okay? If I have non-conforming use status because I was using my property in a certain way, now that's illegal, you don't want it there, but I've been using it that way consistently, I have not abandoned it, I have a property right, okay? As with any property rights, can be taken away with the use of money. Okay? Just like you can take somebody's land for a road, hate to have to do that, just like you can pay them just compensation. You can pay somebody just compensation to get rid of an eyesore or to get rid of a non-conforming use. Okay? What amortization is that's how you pay money to get rid of a non-conforming use. You can amortize the non-conforming use, where you look at the non-conforming use and you say, what is that non-conforming use worth over a certain amount of time? If I pay them that, I can make that non-conforming use go away. So money. Money to rid your eyesores? Come up with some money. That's
Wait,
it.
what are you saying? You buy the property from them, or you pay to have it cleaned up and then over time put it on the property tax? What are you saying?
What I'm saying is you buy the property right from them. Okay? Anything that's a property right, when the government takes it away, that's a taking of private property protected by the Constitution. Okay? These are a property right, and that's one of the takeaways from this discussion. Is you need to understand when somebody has a non-conforming use, that's a property right. Okay? Just like the property right of owning property or using property or excluding other people from the property. Non-conforming use of the property right. Okay? So if you're going to take that away from them, you have to buy it. So yes, you are buying their property. It's not a question of cleaning it up for them. But let me make a distinction though, okay? If we have a code violation that's not a non-conforming use, cleaning it up for them is something that you can do.
Yeah.
Okay, especially if your ordinances say you can do it, and you can make them take it back to cleaning it up for them. That's a code violation for something that's not a non-conforming use. But the takeaway from this discussion is this is a property right. If you're going to take that away from them, you have to pay. You have to pay what that's worth for a certain amount of time. So say somebody's using a piece of property as, in a single-family area, as, you know, an apartment. They have a house and they're renting it out, okay? This happens a lot in Provo, a lot in Logan, where there's students, right? Well, you don't want them to use that anymore, so you make that illegal in that area to have multifamily housing, okay? It's fine, except for the people who are already using it as single-family housing, okay? They get to continue to use that, okay? If you want that to go away, what you do is you look at that use, how much that use is worth, in other words, how much they're collecting in rent, and you amortize that over 20 years, and you pay them 20 years of rent. And you have bought their property right. And that's it. So that's the takeaway. This is the property right. A lot of times when you have these, you need to remember how it interacts with this, and if you want this to go away, you have to pay money, just like with any kind of eminent domain. As far as this goes, you have to think about, you know, code abatement, whether it's health, safety, and welfare issue, whether or not, if you're going to do eminent domain to get rid of that awful building in the middle of town, if you're doing that for a public purpose or just because it's awful, those are the issues you have to think about.
Yeah, I asked the question yesterday. I hope to get a little more definitive of an answer today.
I gave you as definitive answers I had yesterday. It's going to be just as waffly and confusing as I was yesterday.
It was someone else, so maybe you could waffle a different direction.
All right.
As far as non-conforming uses go, defining what a legally established use was, whose responsibility is it to prove that, I should say? Not the definition, but proof. Is it the landowner or is it the county?
No, the responsibility, well, it depends on how you're trying to prove, what you're trying to prove. Okay? Like, for example, this is already getting waffly. A non-conforming use is a property right that becomes a property right without any action. Okay? So you don't have to give someone a non-conforming use pass to have them have a legal non-conforming use right. It happens. It happens as soon as what was once legal becomes illegal. Immediately, they have a legal non-conforming use property right. Okay? If there's some debate about that, because of that, if there's some debate about that, the burden of proving whether or not there's whether or not it was not legal in the first place belongs to the person who's trying to claim it wasn't legal in the first place. Okay? If you're trying to prove abandonment, the burden of proving belongs to the person who's trying to establish abandonment. Okay? But I said that wrong the first time. It is the burden of the person claiming a non-conforming use. It is the burden of the person claiming a non-conforming use to prove that it was legal in the first place, that the non-conforming use is established. Okay? But if you're trying to prove abandonment, it is the burden of the person who's claiming abandonment to prove abandonment. Does that make sense? Does that gel with what you were told before?
Actually, it's better than what we were told before now. How would that apply when we're talking about zoning complaints? Somebody complains about the neighbor, they're doing this and this, or this or that. Is it the county's responsibility to go and prove that the complaint is verifiable, or is it that complainant's responsibility to prove whether or not something was legally established?
So let's make that question a little more concrete. Okay? So you have a particular use, let's call it a junkyard, okay, in your town, and the neighbors don't like the junkyard. Tell me if I'm getting off track. The neighbors don't like the junkyard because of the mice are coming into their property.
Sure.
Okay? So they'd like the junkyard gone. So they come to the county and complaining about the junkyard, and the property owner says, non-conforming use. I got non-conforming use. Is that basically what you're saying?
Yeah, they use the word grandfather.
Same thing. Exactly the same thing. Okay, so they come and they say, I'm grandfather. Okay? It's the junkyard's responsibility to establish the prima facie case that they're grandfather. Okay? The prima facie case is, I was using it when it was legal this way. I have not abandoned or expanded that use, and I can use that continually until today. It's the property owner's responsibility to establish that. Once they've established it, then the burden shifts. Okay? The burden shifts to whoever's trying to prove opposite. Whoever's trying to prove abandonment. Okay? okay? An abandonment is easier to prove usually. Well, it's an easier way to make it go away than whether or not it was legally established in the first place. What I mean by that is the ones that are legally established in the first place, usually it's fairly certain that those were legally established in the first place. Either because we've been doing it ever since before there was even a code. Because if there was no code when I was doing it, it was legal. Okay? Or they can go back in time and they can say, hey, in 1983 when I started doing this, here's what the code said and it said okay. So that's usually not tough. The tough thing is proving abandonment. Okay? And that's why the statute specifically says that the burden of proving abandonment is on the person claiming abandonment. You have to prove that for whatever time, year, whatever, they stopped using it that way. If they stopped using it that way, they lose their non-conforming use status and shut them down.
What about the mice infestation that's coming in the neighborhood because of that?
You've got a health, safety, and welfare issue there, right?
Right.
Okay, so what can you do? Do you shut them down? Because they have a legal non-conforming use. That's a property right.
So how do you deal with the mice or whatever?
You have to find a way to fix the health, safety, and welfare issue. If there is no way to fix it without shutting them down, you're in a different boat. Okay? But you have to give them the opportunity to fix the mice problem.
So the burden goes back on them to fix the problem?
Yes. Okay? We see this a lot. There's two things in the statute on non-conforming uses. There's non-conforming uses and there's non-compliant structures. We see that a lot with non-compliant structures. Those are buildings that, if they were built today, wouldn't meet code. Okay? Well, a lot of times one of the reasons they wouldn't meet code is because of the way the electrical system was installed. Okay? Today we would require the electrical system to be installed in a very different way. Okay? But they were built back then, they continue to use it that way, so they're fine. Except if the way the electrical system was installed is hazardous. It's going to create a fire or some hugely dangerous thing. Well, what you do is you go there and you say, can you bring this up to the health, safety, and welfare standards that we have? If they say no, then you can say, this building is contained. It's coming down. But you have to at least give them that ability, that opportunity to resolve the health, safety, and welfare issue. But you got to remember, they have property rights. Is that
On abandonment for non-conforming uses, you said whatever the time frame is. What is an acceptable time frame? And does it have to be voluntarily abandoned? Or can it be, you know, because there are certain things that are related to market, for instance. They may have used a property for a specific thing and they as a rental, and they just couldn't rent it because there was just no one to rent it. And it's set vacant for a year,
Yep.
which was your statute, and then the use doesn't go away because they said I didn't voluntarily abandon that. What's a time frame, and what about the voluntary?
Those are fantastic questions. All the questions you guys asked have been fantastic questions. And here's the situation. First of all, as far as the time frame goes, again, the beauty part is that as a county, you guys can put whatever you want. You can put whatever time frame you want. Okay? The state statute has a minimum time frame that I wouldn't try to get around. Okay? Which, anybody remember if it's 6 months? Is it a year? I wouldn't try to go less than a year anyway. Most places go a year, but they have to abandon for a year. Okay? You can say whatever you want, pretty much, okay? But just without exceeding what the state statute says, which, and 6 months is something else, I think. But I'm pretty sure it's a year, I'm pretty sure that's right, okay? So the time frame is a year, unless you say differently. If you want to say differently, that's fine, okay? Involuntary abandonment, though, is a fantastic issue that we do not have any case law about, except for we know in the case of rentals, like you said, okay? We do know that if they have made efforts to rent, if they have made reasonable efforts to rent, if they have advertised, if they put signs in the window and advertise, that is going to not be abandonment, okay? So, and we also know that if the abandonment is because of some kind of fire or something, people get to rebuild after a fire for a certain amount of time, okay? That's all we know about involuntary abandonment. My personal opinion, again, this is opinion, and our office has been advising opinion to this effect, and that is that any involuntary abandonment does not start the clock for a reasonable amount of time. if it's been an involuntary abandonment, and you never do anything about it, you can't just leave it forever and come back to it, okay? But involuntary abandonments do not start the clock. If you're talking about a rental situation though, and there's signs in the window, and there's advertisements in the paper, and you show that, that's gonna fly. That's gonna keep them from you being able to start the abandonment clock. Did I answer that pretty completely? Did I get everything that you said? Any other questions about that?
One.
Uh-huh.
1 year.
Sorry.
I said, uh-huh.
It's 1 year.
Oh, it's 1 year? Oh,
Yeah.
thank you. I thought you said just one.
Just one, it's like, yes. Speak out loud, Charlie.
Thank you.
Sorry.
I thought, I didn't think that. I'll think of what the sickness is. It's hard to keep all those. Okay.
How
Any
about
others?
recreational uses?
Recreational uses. That's interesting because one of my stories about recreational uses relates to non-conforming uses. I got a call from the governor's office because someone who is well connected somehow, I don't know, got through to the governor's office, and the governor's office often sends me these things because the governor's office, although they very much want to help, they don't know anything about this stuff. So I got a call from the governor's office because someone owns a cabin in the mountains somewhere, and that cabin burned down.
In the Sealy fire.
In the Sealy fire, as a matter of fact.
Yeah. Sounds familiar.
Just, Frankie, you're making me real nervous, you know.
I have the problem county, what can I say?
Yeah, everything happens. So the cabin burned down in the Sealy fire, and they want to rebuild the cabin, and one of the county commissioners said, as it was reported to me, and you can, you know, give opposition, said, "You will rebuild that cabin over my dead body." But there were some swear words in there that I don't get. So the person wants to claim a non-conforming use, because the non-conforming use statute clearly says that if I have non-conforming use that gets burned down by fire, I get to rebuild, and they want to rebuild the cabin. What the county is saying in that case is, you don't have a non-conforming use because you were never legal in the first place, because you never had a permit to build that cabin. You just had a piece of land up there and you went up there and built the cabin. Even though they had the cabin up there for years and years and years. Does that sound right? So, just to relate that back to this, what do you think? Do they have a non-conforming use? I don't know, Frankie.
So they built it before a permit was required?
It's a great question.
No, probably don't.
You know, that's a fantastic question, though. What if they had?
Then it was conforming.
If they had built first before a permit was required, was even required by the county, yeah, I think they probably would. Okay? But if they built a cabin where a permit was required without a permit, a cabin, was that use ever legally established? No. And there's no amount of time that's going to change that if it was never legally established. Yeah.
What if the county's been taxing it and receiving a tax benefit from
It was never being taxed because it was never verified the cabin existed prior to the fire.
Okay, but
The property is.
aside from
Okay,
that,
let's be
pretend like there's
hypothetical.
another county that happens
Yeah,
to-
pretend like
That's
the
right.
cabin
I
is
tried to
super little
verify it.
Google.
Yeah, it didn't show up on aerials either.
Really?
The tree cover was too dense. It couldn't
Really?
locate it.
That's interesting.
Yep.
my question still stands.
Yes, it is. It's a good hypothetical question. And what do you think? Let's throw it out here. You guys are government. They've been paying taxes on it?
Taxes is in the land use law.
Here's the thing. Here's been my experience with taxes. My experience with taxes is that the land use, the judges who look at land use cases, except in one particular case, don't give a rat's patootie about whether or not you've been paying taxes on it. The one particular case is the case of adverse possession. If you want to claim adverse possession, that's where you occupy somebody else's land for long enough that it becomes your land. Okay, if you want to claim that, you have to have been paying taxes on it all the time. Apart from that, I've never seen a court care about whether or not you were paying taxes on the property and for how much. It doesn't establish it's never established any kind of ownership or any kind of right. The fact that you've been paying taxes, it never establishes anything. Okay?
It's just like a fence lot. long as that fence has been there for 20 years, that's the boundary.
Well, that depends on what theory you're using, and what theory you're describing is called boundary by acquiescence. And if you've had a fence line for there for a certain amount of time, and the people on both sides have intended that to be the boundary, and use that as the boundary, it becomes the boundary without regard on what taxes you're going to pay. Okay, that's different from adverse possession.
So Brent, besides the tax question, if the county never made an issue of that the use wasn't legal in the first place, and now they're making an issue just as because it's a non-conforming use, are the courts going to have any problem with that they haven't enforced it prior?
I think the right attorney can come along and make the right case that would go bad for the county in that. But the way the law stands right now, we have the precedent right now, at least the precedent that I'm aware of, says that even if the county hasn't been enforcing their ordinances, that doesn't mean a waiver of the right to enforce their ordinances now. The case that I'm thinking of in particular takes place up in Logan City, okay, where there's been a law there that you cannot park cars in the park strip since the 40s. There's been a law there, okay? Well, they have students there everywhere and lots of apartments and no parking. And since the 40s, people have been parking their cars in the park strip. And the city has said nothing about it, okay? Until one day the city said, we're sick and tired of this. Stop parking the park strip. Look, we have this ordinance. So you can't establish a legal non-conforming use because this ordinance has been in case since the 40s, okay? And people are saying, but you waived your right to enforce that, okay? And the court said, nope. They get to enforce it, even though they haven't enforced it all these years. That's a very narrow thing, and I can't tell you how far that'll extend. But that's where it is right now. So if you have had that cabin up in the woods, and if you knew about that cabin up in the woods, and you didn't ever do anything about that cabin up in the woods, there's a good chance that the court would say, yeah, you can enforce that now, even though you haven't enforced that for the last 20 years. But I wouldn't take that chance. Because I think the right attorney could convince a court easily to go the other way. So when you find out about that cabin, I would take care of it.
We'll probably know a lot more next year after the San Pete County fire last year and all the cabins.
Oh yeah, we got more cabins burned down?
We're illegal in that big hollow fire. Yeah.
And I bet we have a whole bunch of those cabins without permits too.
We're crossing a lot of those bridges already. You may be really busy, but what we can and can't do.
Isn't that the beauty part of the law? And that segues so nicely into this right here, stale codes. Okay? Not to leap ahead, not that we can't come back to this, but stale codes. When's the last time you amended your code? Let me ask you this. And if you don't want to raise your hand and volunteer the answer, okay? Does your code have special exceptions in it? Provisions for special exceptions. Okay. That hasn't been a law on the books since 2005, I think is when that was taken out. And the law constantly changes, guys, as you've seen, as we've discussed. The law constantly changes. And for some reason, people are they're horrified to changing their code. You know? This comes back to our discussion yesterday about how the planning commission's job is to plan and to suggest amendments to the code, which should be changing all the time. To keep up with the state law, to keep up with your community and what your community wants, to keep up with different things, something different's happening over here, so I want something happening over here, and you should be changing the plan and changing your code to react to all those things, okay? I'm not saying you should go nuts, I'm not saying it requires a complete revision, but it's something you should stay on top of all the time, because the law is constantly changing. And I talk to a lot of people who still have special exceptions on their books. Lots. All right. Sorry for skipping ahead. Did we finish this discussion about where were we? We're on. No, we didn't. We didn't come close to finishing discussion on recreation uses. I'm running out of time. So should we jump to something else or?
Roads and access.
Roads and access. You know, I've been property rights ombudsman for coming on to 8 years. And the type of calls I get changes over time. You know, when I first started, I was getting lots of calls about one thing, and then things changed, and I was getting lots of calls about another thing, and then the economy went south. None of those kinds of calls anymore. There is one kind of call that has consistently been a frequent call that I've always received in the entire 7 years I've been here, and that's about roads and access. It's always, 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 always an issue. Roads and access. There's lots of ways to create a road. And there's lots of issues that go along with that. One of the main problems that you have is the way roads, especially in mountainous and rural areas, cross properties, okay? And the way property is owned. If you look at a map of the parcel of your county, it looks like a horrible jigsaw puzzle, doesn't it? This piece is owned by so forth, and this piece is owned by that property owner, and then you got a piece right here that's owned by Sitla, and then you cross another piece that's owned by a property owner, and then over here, this part is owned by the federal government, over here, and it's just this jigsaw puzzle winding right through the middle of it is a road, right? And some counties want that road to be a road, and some counties absolutely do not want that road to be a road, okay? Well, how do you make that into a road? Okay? Well, on every parcel, the way to make it into a road is different. Okay? There's RS 2477 roads. I'm sure you all just, when I say that, I know I do. Okay? There's the 10-year road by use statute that applies to private property owners. That is a nightmare to me too. So basically, if you want that to be a road, you've got to look at each particular parcel and say, how did that become a road on that parcel? Okay? And the problem that we have, one of the problems that I get is that a lot of times rights of the private property owners, which is what I'm concerned with, get forgotten. Okay? In our zeal to make this a road. Okay? We have this road, that road has been there for a long time. Okay? So it's a road. Okay? We have RS 2477 here and RS 2477 here. So this private property owner, we're not even going to talk to you, dude, because that's a road. Okay? A lot of times it is. A lot of times, 10-year road by use statute, it becomes a road. Okay? Most of the time. But the private property owner has rights, you know, and should have the ability to say something about that. That's just my particular rant. And if you guys want to talk about the 10-year road by use statute and what I think about it and what I think are the absolutely criminal changes that happened to the 10-year road by use statute about 2 years ago, just let me know, because we could spend half a day doing that. I won't bother getting into it now. But let me ask you a couple of questions that get asked to me about this subject. Okay? Say I do have a road that goes up through the hills like that. Okay? And say some hunters want that to be a public road. They want to go up there and use it to hunt and to fish and stuff like that. You're a county official. Okay? Do you want that road to be public or don't you? What? What's the answer? Do you want that road to be public? What happens if that road becomes public?
Accept liability on it.
You want to have to do that? Okay. Well, but what about the sportsmen? Some of us are sportsmen. And what about the sportsmen who want to go up there? And what about the fact that you also want to keep the peace? And there's some guy who's about halfway up here who keeps fencing it. And the sportsmen want to get through. What are you going to do about that? Are you going to say, oh no, that's a public road, so I'm going to bust the law? Yet, if it's a public road, then it becomes the county's responsibility, doesn't it? So what do they do?
If it's a public road and his property becomes damaged.
What's that, Frankie?
If it becomes a public road and his property is damaged as a result of you making it become a public road, what liability does the county incur on that?
It's a great question. Let me ask you another question, okay? Say that it is a public road, and say that you agree that it's a public road, okay? And there's a property owner up here who owns property that's on that public road, okay? That you don't really want to have to maintain. It's a Jeep trail for crying out loud, but it's been a Jeep trail there forever, okay? So it's a public road, and there's a guy up here who wants to build a cabin, okay? So he shows up one day up there with a grader, and it's your road. You don't want to take care of it, but it is your road. Does he get to grade it? Does he get to go up there and make stuff to it? Do stuff to it? You're never going to do it. But does he get to?
No.
Why not? Because it's the county's, right? But you won't do it. And he wants to build a cabin. Huh?
Right?
Yeah.
Is it it, excuse me, is it the county's or is it open for use by the public? And is there a difference there?
Well, I know what I think the answer to that is, but anybody want to wager an opinion? Is there any difference between a public road and a county's road?
Ownership? Title?
No, we don't maintain all our roads.
Yeah, I think a public road is different than a county
I
road.
think so.
Isn't it based on like, if it's a state road or a public, because my husband's a highway patrolman, so if it's a county road, the county officers take care of it. If it's a state road, highway patrol would take care of it. So wouldn't it be, are you talking about private roads and not state or county?
I'm talking about public roads.
You're talking about public?
I'm talking about public roads.
So wouldn't it just be, it would have to fall into either county or state?
Here's the thing, okay?
Public.
Who is the public?
Yeah,
The
exactly.
local jurisdiction is the public though, folks.
But there's jurisdiction on those roads. It's
Okay?
county.
In other words, the road has to be somebody's.
Right.
It has to be somebody's, and there is no nobody out there. There is no just generally everybody out there. Okay? Which means that, yeah, it could be a state road, could be a city road, could be a county road, but it's got to be somebody's road. It's not just everybody's road.
So our right-of-way road, is there the
Well,
right-of-way through?
if it's by a right-of-way road, if you mean a road that just serves the people there, okay, well then it may not be a public road. Okay? If you have a road that leads to a cabin and the only person who uses that is that cabin, that may not be a public road. It may be a private road, in which case it's that person's road and not the county's road. Okay? Yeah.
So are you saying that if the state or Fed isn't claiming the road, it by default falls back to the local jurisdiction?
What I'm saying is that I've never known a road that was held to be nobody's road.
Or everybody's road.
Or everybody's road, that's right. So what I'm saying is yes, that's exactly right. If there's a public road, the local government, who is the public body, it's their road. Now, that's not to say that you are obligated to do anything with any of these roads. I don't know of any law that obligates you to upkeep any of the roads you have or anything like that, okay? But if it's a public road, it belongs to the public jurisdiction, in which case if it's a road going over a mountain somewhere that's hundreds of miles from anything else, yeah, it probably belongs to the county. I don't know of any authority, case law, statute, or anything like that that contradict that.
And the Forest Service would be able to use.
Well, that depends on what their mood is. The Forest Service BLM says that's not our road until I feel like I want it to be my road tomorrow. The federal government.
It's a fun topic.
Right? Are you saying that, in your earlier question, you said, do you want that person who has a cabin up there being able to blade that road? Do you see anything wrong with the county authorizing someone to put a blade on the county road?
Well, that's the beauty part. If it's your road, you know, what do you get to do with it? If you want to let somebody to do that, do you see any harm in that? I personally don't, except for one thing, okay? And that's this, okay? If that road was established by, say, the 10-year by use rule, okay? So it was used by the public for 10 years. We know that because we can see, we have a map from the 30s that clearly shows that road. It's been used, it's been there for a long, long time, okay? And somebody wants, they not only want to build a cabin up here, they want to build several cabins up there, okay? And you know, that road just ain't going to do it. They need a bigger road, okay? So they want to come and blade it, but not only they want to come and blade it, they want to what? Widen it. What do you think?
On private property.
So what's happening? They're taking private property away, aren't they? Okay? Because what you have is you have a road that was established by the use. And the use is what the road is, plus a little bit for safety, okay? But the use is what the road is, okay? And on each side, there's private property owners who own that road, who own that land.
Isn't there state code that says that that right-of-way is 66 feet
Nope.
if it's public?
That is a common misconception, and I will go to my grave telling you that there's not. And
So it's
I hate to say this,
just straight through adjudication then?
I hate to say this, but it is a common misconception that is commonly held by counties and was originally established by county people and has been put forth by county, and it just is